Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to O Magnetic South. We're back now to the romanticizing of the South that we have seen a number of times in Leaves of Grass. This is poem number 5 of the 22 of From Noon to Starry Night. And you'll remember that we said in our introductory comments that this cluster of poems is in some ways trying to reconcile opposites. And one more time, we're going to try to understand Whitman's love of the South, given that Whitman had a certain feeling about the South as being rebellious and the Confederacy and all of that. Now, once in the whole line of the way this poem came to its fruition, it actually was placed right after crossing Brooklyn Ferry, so that's fascinating, before it ended up where it ended up. Now, our assumptions are that you've been with us at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist from the very beginning, that you've had you've been able to get to the set of introductory comments for Starry Night, and then, of course, we just finished with Locomotive. Let's hear what our Nortons has to tell us about this poem. It was first printed in Leaves of Grass 1860, and in the July 15th, 1860 edition of the Southern Literary Messenger as Longings for Home. The poem was reprinted unchanged in text and title through the editions of 1867, 1871, 1876. In 1881, it received its present title and position with 2 changes. Tennessee was dropped for Kentucky in line 19, and the following line after the present line 19 was also dropped, quote, an Arkansas prairie, a sleeping lake, or still bayou, unquote. Whitman's liking for the South, recalling his New Orleans days, is of course genuine enough, yet the passion expressed here with its luxuriant phrasing may seem faintly fastidious, as if for the occasion. We're going to see maybe that this language is a little bit overdone, and to some degree maybe Whitman is playing some games here. Now, we're going to run across several regional titles. We got a bunch of rivers of the Deep South: Roanoke, Savannah, Altama, PD, the Tombigbee. All of these are going to be the rivers of the South. And then we're going to have a lake in south central Florida, the Okeechobee, that's going to be referenced. And then when we get to Palmeco Sound, we're going to be talking about the channel between the coast and islands off of North Carolina. Now, the challenge here is, for Whitman, I think, trying to balance his view of the South. On the one hand, he sees the South as causing the disruption, the tear of the fabric of the country through the Confederacy. On the other hand, of course, he sees it as beautiful, magnetic, is how he'll phrase it here. Finally, there's been some scholars who have looked at this poem and thought maybe there is a little bit of a reference to a New Orleans romance that we commented on earlier in our biographic information, and there's some reflecting that's going on back to the spring of 1848, when Whitman took his brief trip down south, and he says that he had a certain love affair down there, right? Not a lot of evidence to prove it. Now, this O Magnetic South, just go back and look, and you'll see that we've had 8 times total this O as a title, right? O him, O you, whom I often, O me, O life, O tan-faced prairie boar, O captain, my captain is probably the most famous of these O poems, O star of France, and O living always. And this will be the last one in Leaves of Grass that we will have this construction. 14 times in this poem we're going to get the use of the word O. And notice all the exclamation points to emphasize what he's saying about the South and his celebration of the South. By the way, magnetic and South both used in Journeys Through These States. So if you go back and you look at that, you'll be reminded of the game that's being played. O magnet South. O glistening perfumed South. You'll remember perfume from Return of the Hero 7, Enchanting the Square, Diephragm 4. South. My South. Oh, quick metal. Now, this is obviously the reference possibly to the fact that the Rebs, in Whitman's view, maybe were a little bit too quick in their metal. Rich blood, impulse, we're back to it again, but then notice he tries to balance it, and love, good and evil, and there it is, noon to starry night, good and love. Oh, all dear to me. The use of his word all, I think, there's a lot of debate about what's the most important single word in all Leaves of Grass, and notice I just used the word all. I think it is maybe one of the, all certainly sits up there. If you went back and all you did was study, this is fun to do, take all Leaves of Grass and just read it from start to finish, only looking for one word. It's fascinating how the word all gets used over and over again. Again, his inclusivity, his passion for bringing us all together. Oh dear to me, my birth things, all moving things, and the trees. We're going to get to the trees here in a little bit again. Where I was born, the grains, plants, rivers. Again, notice his trinities, okay? And then listen to all the S sounds. Dear to me, my slow, sluggish rivers where they flow, distant over flats of silvery sands or through swamps. Now that's brilliant. And why is that brilliant? Because all those S sounds force us to slow down. And what is it that he wants to say about the South? Well, it's a place of ease, of slowness. And for those of us who have spent a lot of time in the South, we will often say, there's a certain kind of just laid-backness to the South that's quite wonderful, right? Notice, dear to me, and now he's going to get this list. The Roanoke, the Savannah, the Altamaha, the Petey, the Tombigbee, the Santee, the Coosa, the Sabine. By the way, that's 8 of those rivers. Oh, pensive. His use of that word here is fascinating. Right? It's like, am I overdoing it here? Pensive, far away, wandering. Think about, he's going to use the word wandering a couple times in this poem. Makes us think about our Homer, right? I return with my soul to haunt their banks again. Again, the use of the word haunt has led any number of scholars to try and figure out what's he doing here. Is this does have something to do with his feelings about his trip, or what it is? Again, he says, in Florida, I float on transparent lakes. I float on the Okeechobee. I cross the hummock land, or through pleasant openings, or dense forests. In other words, the South is this amazing symbol of it's mazy, to use the language of Milton in Paradise Lost. Mazy, right? Again, sailing in my coaster on deck. I coast off Georgia. I coast up the Carolinas. I see where the live oak is growing. Obviously, we have a whole poem about this live oak, don't we? I see where the yellow pine, the scented bay tree, the lemon and orange, the cypress, the graceful palmetto. Now, Whitman's love of trees is legendary. Take us back to Song of the Open Road 7. You remember he asks, why are there trees I never walk under, but huge and melodious thoughts descend upon me? He loves trees, and here obviously he's playing the game. I pass rude sea headlands and enter Palmico sound through an inlet and dart my vision inland. Notice this darting of the vision along with pensive. Oh, the cotton plant. Now, obviously, some of the symbolism of the South that's most disturbing for us today as American readers are things like what he mentions here with the cotton, right? Oh, the cotton plant, the growing fields. Think about the power of Leaves of Grass with growing. Growing fields of rice, sugar, hemp. Again, notice the trinities, always the threes. The cactus guarded with thorns. Only use of cactus and all Leaves of Grass is here. The laurel tree. You'll remember these I sing in spring. The laurel tree with large white flowers. The range afar. The richness and barrenness. Again, the opposites. The old woods charged with mistletoe and trailing moss. The piney odor. Now notice he's getting all the senses, the smells now. And the gloom, the awful natural stillness. And any of us that have spent much time in swamps, as he's going to get to the word here in a second, we know what he's talking about. And then in parenthetics, here in these dense swamps, the freebooter carries his gun and the fugitive has his concealed hut, in parenthetic. In other words, down in the South, there's places where we're not totally sure what's going on. It's a little bit uncertain for him. Then he comes back to it again. Oh, the strange fascination of these half-known, half-impassable swamps. And then he'll say it, infested by reptiles, resounding with the bellow of the alligator, the sad noises of the night owl and the wildcat, and the whir of the rattlesnake. You'll remember rattlesnake from Song of Myself 33. The mockingbird. Think about the power, of course, of To Kill a Mockingbird, specifically as it relates to our understanding of the South. The wild turkey, the raccoon, the possum. A Kentucky cornfield, the tall, graceful, long-leaved corn, again, leaves of grass, right? Slender, flapping, bright green with tassels, with beautiful ears, each well sheathed in its husk. Now, for northern readers who maybe had never seen cornfields, this wouldn't mean a lot. But for Whitman, he sees these as cornfields as beautiful, and of course, they are beautiful, right? For those of us especially who spend time living where lots of cornfields are. Oh, my heart, oh, tender and fierce pangs. Notice again how he brings together opposites brilliantly here, reconciling the opposites of the South. Oh, tender and fierce pangs. I told you about his use of the word fierce. It's remarkable in Leaves of Grass. I can stand them not, I will depart. In other words, I gotta go. Oh, to be a Virginian where I grew up, Oh, to be a Carolinian, oh, longings irrepressible. I'll go back to old Tennessee and never wander more. Tennessee almost like an Ithaca-like idealized place. Well, what are we going to say about a poem like this at 2A? Well, I think his argument is that America is made up of wonderful contradictions, just like his poems are made up of wonderful contradictions, because that's what America is. And to try and land on one side of the contradiction or the other for Whitman is inexcusable. You got to take both in hand, even though it's obviously painfully difficult to do so. At 2B, I love the repetition of the O sounds in this poem. And of course, the language might be perceived as a little grandiose, a little over the top, and how do you read it will be one of the 3B questions for you. At 3A, so much has been made of this poem as it relates to the poem Dixieland, which of course the 1859 offering, that was in fact the Confederacy national anthem during the war. Certainly Whitman knew this, although it was a favorite of Lincoln's, and Whitman knew that as well. And of course, Lincoln, born in Kentucky, loved Dixieland, and he had it playing when Lee surrendered at the very end of the war, which is fascinating. And of course at 3A as well, you can think about the powerful poetry in prose of Mark Twain, right? And the way in which he will celebrate the South, while at the same time critiquing and often condemning the South as well. Finally, at 3B, speaking of the South, what are your views of the South? And how do you hold in your heart and in your intellectual hand both sides of the debate about the South? How do you reconcile with the paradoxes? And is maybe Leaves of Grass and your study of Leaves of Grass helping you in that regards? I hope that it is. Thank you.